the spinner, we think of Ash Gardner in the women's. Wow, I've just broken my webcam. I just kicked the wire and it fell off my screen.
Oh, village. Hello, welcome back to the Cricket Nerds. It's all of us together to talk about mainly England squad, because there have been a few interesting things. Preview this second Ashes game. Obviously, Australia won the first one, 1-0 up going into Lords. But before we get into that, just a quick thing about the women's Ashes, which have just started as well. And I think it's great for the women's game that the women's Ashes is playing at a similar time to the men's Ashes, because I think that's helping out with the hype. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I think it was brilliant. So they've just finished the test match. Women's Ashes is obviously a multi-format series as opposed to the men's Ashes, which is purely test matches. And they had a 5-day test, which usually women's test matches are 4 days. And like me and Benji went to watch the 4th day. It was on a Sunday. We watched that at Trent Bridge, and it was brilliant. Like, it was so good. And I think, yeah, you're potentially right that it's because it's on at the same time. You're already in that Ashes fever. Like, I don't feel as strongly negative about the Australian women's cricketers. However, just because the Aussies have already beaten us and beaten the men's, I was so into it. But tell you what, it was brilliant. Like, great day out. The quality is rising so much in women's cricket. And in the wake of this damning report that's just come out about how England cricket is the most unequal and discriminatory thing. It shines a light on how much better the game can be when everybody has the opportunity to play.
It was a great game of cricket as well, though. Like, there were ups and downs. I read a stat that it was because it was a 5-day test. It was the first women's test since 2015 that's had a result, which I thought was awesome.
Really?
Or the first Ashes test has had a result since 2015.
I think it's more likely that, yeah.
But yeah, it was just awesome to see that it actually got through to the end, and like, it was a great game of cricket. I think there were so many ups and downs. I think England looked like they were on top in the first innings after they got Elise Perry out. And then Annabelle Sutherland comes in and hits an unbeaten century. And then England fight back with one of the best double hundreds I've ever seen from Tammy Beaumont, just playing out of her mind. All the while, in both England bowling in Sophie Ecclestone takes 10 wickets in the match to cement herself as the best bowler in the world, to set up England needing like 268 runs, which the start that England got off to on day 4, I think, James, you and I were both there thinking like, oh yeah, we can do this.
Yeah.
And then an almighty collapse through the absolute genius of Ash Gardner.
Yeah, she's a good player, isn't she? She's very
player.
good bowler. Hard for England to get away, and it was
quite quick as well. Actually, when you watch her live, she's fast.
Right, so that's the women's game, and hopefully, as England fans, the England women can bring it back in the shorter format events. But just to briefly talk about the England squad for tomorrow's Ashes game, it's looking like it could be an interesting one, because we were messaging earlier and we weren't necessarily happy with the fact that Josh Tongue has got a nod ahead of Mark Wood as the replacement for Moeen Ali. I don't think we thought Rehan Ahmed was going to get a nod in the squad, did we, for this one? Realistically,
not realistically, and I think the fact that we've gone for all seamers, it says a lot. Like, it says that, I'm sure I saw a stat that like nobody's taken a first class fifer as a spinner in Lords since like Glenn Maxwell in 2019, but it's been like 87% seamers have taken the wickets at Lords. So The only thing that confuses me a little is Josh Tongue, why he gets the nod over like Chris Woakes, or maybe he's just that point of difference. You know what? It doesn't actually confuse me now that I think about it, because Mark Wood needs to be injured. That's the only explanation, because he is our best fast bowler in terms of like raw pace and being a point of difference. He must still be injured. So Josh Tongue is like the next best thing, who isn't just like a fast medium right arm bowler. He is. Yeah. I mean, he is fast medium right arm bowler according to Cricket Info, but he hits the deck a bit harder. He bowls a little bit differently, so that's probably why.
Yeah. I mean, we saw him against Ireland, didn't we? And obviously, Ireland, Australia, completely different in terms of the quality. But we saw a few spicy spells from Josh Tongue. However, Benj, what are your thoughts on England trusting Joe Root then as England's main spinner, really?
Yeah, and this was the thing that I messaged you all about earlier, wasn't it? Was that if we get another flat deck, we're in trouble. Like if we get another deck where it's not doing much for the seamers, and we're relying on the spinners, it's a recipe for disaster, I think. Especially as you've just said, with Joe Root as the only spinner in there. It really shows the gaping hole in spinning depth that we have in England. I think it goes to the county game, the fact that we just don't generate spinners or spinners who are of high enough quality. Like they have this role in England, don't they? Which is hold up an end, let the seamers do the work, give them a break. Whereas if we look at even like Australia, who play a very different style of cricket, say subcontinent, but it's probably more similar to what we have in England. It's the seamers are there as wicket-taking bowlers, but Ash Gardner in the women's match and someone like Nathan Lyon in the men's game, they're there, to take wickets. And I think it's a role that Jack Leach had developed into, but with him not being there, I don't think we've got another wicket-taking spinner who can come in, especially someone like Moeen who just got injured.
Yeah, I think it's looking that I think England do have faith in Rahan Ahmed, and they showed faith in even picking him to go to Pakistan. But I think given the nature of the Lord's pitch, I do think having the fourth seam is probably the sensible choice. And when we look at Australia, I don't think there's going to be much change. The only change I can really think of is they leave out Scott Boland, because England's batters did take a liking to him, and they'll probably bring in Mitchell Stark for Scott Boland. I don't know if you agree with that, James, or if you think there's a different choice there.
Okay, I actually think that they should have gone with the same squad, or should go with the same squad. Australia should go with the same squad, because it's going to be greener. Pitch looks a hell of a lot greener. Stark would have been really useful on the flat pitch because he gets more out of dead pitches, but Boland, in friendly English conditions, he could cause England a lot of problems. My one concern is that Josh Tongue, he took a fiver, but it was against Ireland, and he looked all right, but I wasn't blown away by him. And if I put myself in an Australian's shoes, I'd be thinking, brilliant. Like there's somebody we can target. I'm not scared of him at all. Whereas Woakes, he at least adds a bit more batting depth as well. And if it's going to be swinging, then I'd rather have him. But that's just me. I'm hoping to be proven wrong. I'm hoping Josh Tongue does amazingly, takes a 10-for in both innings, and gets a knighthood.
I guess it takes a bit of the pressure off someone like Anderson, Broad, and Robinson, who they're all either old / have niggles. So it means that Josh Tongue can kind of take the weight off them, and he'll still bowl accurately and still bowl well. Whereas if you take one of them off and you bring a Mark Wood on, even though Mark Wood is probably injured, it just means that he could get hit for runs. So Josh Tongue can still keep it tight relatively.
I mean, Ben Foakes has put out in an interview about his decision why he's not brought Mark Wood in. And it's because he's not built his body back up to the point where he can play the role that Stokes wants him to play.
Okay.
So the enforcer just coming in bowling hard. And I think he's not quite there yet. So it's not that he's injured, he's just not quite back to that point. I think the idea is from Headingley onwards, Mark Wood's back in it and he's back doing that role. So I almost think that the reason why Josh Tong's in there is almost as a spare Mark Wood. Like, he's a bowler who can hit 90 miles an hour. Josh Tong can bowl that pace. That's probably why he's been brought in. And I think the suggestion is that he's going to be used as that enforcer, while that Anderson, Broad and Robinson try and get the ball moving and try and take the wickets that way. It's interesting that Stokes hasn't put himself in that role, because I think he underbowled himself in the first test. But again, that's for another time. That was difficult.
Well, it promises to be a... Oh, yes, you got a question.
I was just say, last question before we end. The Foakes debate. Where do we stand on the Foakes debate?
That's a really good question.
It's a hard one to kind of argue for, because it's essentially England are trying to fit 8 batsmen into 7 places. I think in an ideal world, Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes would pick Ben Foakes, because he is so good behind the stumps. However, in terms of the style of cricket that Stokes wants the team to play, not necessarily Brendan McCullum, but I think Ben Stokes, style that he wants to play, there isn't as much room for Ben Foakes. You look at England's 1 to 7 and it's just attack pretty much. So yeah, I think Ben Foakes should play, but I can't make the decisions for Ben Stokes really.
I would say that Ben Foakes should play. And I actually do think it is a BAZBALL move, because the whole idea is, be aggressive and positive with the batting and pick your best bowlers to take 20 wickets every match. And part of that bowling unit is the keeper. And at the moment, they're picking, what should be their best bowlers at the time, their best uninjured bowlers, but they're not picking their best keeper. They're probably not even picking the 4th, 5th best keeper in England right now. They are, realistically, Johnny Bairstow's far more of a part-time keeper now, because he hasn't kept in first class for a long time, really, not for an extended period. So I would personally open with... I'd probably open with Harry Brook, if I'm honest. And I would then have Bairstow back at 5 and Foakes behind the stumps, because I think Foakes makes those chances. He's somebody that, if the Australians are standing outside their crease, Foakes could stand up to our seamers. Bairstow, if he did that, I'd be, head in my hands as byes just fly.
Yeah.
So...
You're not going to see Foakes miss a stumping, are you?
It's unlikely. It's very unlikely.
I think
it's an interesting one, because I think we could be sat here this time next week and Bairstow's took a great catch and we're like, oh yeah, he's fine in there. Or we could be sat here next week and Bairstow's dropped the catch of a man who goes on to make 350. That's the problem, is we are so English in our thoughts that we always like the conservative option. We prepare for the worst. And I think that's not what BAZBALL is. BAZBALL is just, let's just go for it and have a go. Whereas we like that safety of knowing we've got a good gloveman behind the stumps. So it's an interesting debate, but it promises to be a great test match. England have to win pretty much, because otherwise if Australia win, then it's not looking good.
We're not
for
going
England.
2-0 down.
No. And also it's unlikely to be a draw unless the rain comes down. So yeah, my money's on England because I want England to win. And that's the same for all of us. So let us know in the comments, who do you think is going to win and why? Make sure you subscribe as well if you haven't already. Like the video, follow us on social media. All the links are in the description. You can also listen to these podcasts on any podcasting sites you want to listen to. And we hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.